Speaking of stealing them, I have a fun little hot confession to drop on you.
Did you steal them?
Yes.
Hello, friends. I apologize in advance if my voice sounds a bit rough. I'm recovering from COVID, and I occasionally have to stop to cough whenever I talk for too long at a time. A couple of months ago, I had an idea for a big, ambitious video that would require a lot of cooperation and collaboration with several people within the Pokemon community, and that did not work out the way that I wanted it to. But when I was planning that video, my friend Chris, Contempus Nerd on Twitter, DM'd me on Discord and started talking to me about his own memories with the Pokemon TCG in the early days of Pokemon. I wasn't necessarily focusing on the TCG, but the stuff that he showed me was really interesting, so I did some research and I asked him to sit down with me for a conversation, and we recorded that over Discord. Even though that video did not come to fruition, I felt like the conversation we had was good, very informative, and an entertaining and nice stroll down memory lane for both of us. So I decided to repurpose that conversation into what you're about to see. I hope you enjoy it and find it informative. If you do, then maybe there's room for me to make more of this type of stuff, especially in the middle of all the long, research-intensive videos that I often make in this space. For now, though, let's just drop off in the middle of the conversation and get started.
So I'm thinking things of timelines, right?
Yes.
When did you get into it? Because you gave me a year, and I don't want to just look it up and cheat.
Probably somewhere between like 2001, 2003, if I had a guess.
You mentioned the Fossil expansion came out.
Yeah, so you had the base set that came out, and then shortly after you had the Jungle and Fossil expansions. And we commonly called them Jungleize and Fossilized cards.
Yeah.
Then after that, I think that's when the Team Rocket edition came out.
Yeah, there was a base set 2 in February 2000, and then Team Rocket came out after that.
Gotcha. Then yeah, it was after the Rocket expansion had just dropped that I started competing with that in person.
Team Rocket would have been English, April 24th, 2000.
Okay. Then yeah, probably like 2001 if I had to guess. Because I just remember like just playing against those cards specifically, the Team Rocket ones.
Everything came to the United States in September 1998, so that would have been a year and a half, close to 2 years after like the card game had been out. And what struck me about the stuff you shared was that seemed like a pretty well developed card league.
Exactly. And I definitely got into it after they'd been running it already for a year or two probably, so they had time to iron out the kinks of it. But the system for how they set it up was honestly pretty great, looking back on it. Like, so what the job that they had to do was they had to organize something that was, at least competitive feeling for the kids playing, but also just keep me in mind that, your audience is primarily children. Mm-hmm. And you need to have some kind of systems in place to keep them incentivized, but also, keep them from being assholes to each other, make sure that there's some kind of adults in place just to maintain the peace. Like I remember the one or two officials that they would have at each of these events. I completely forgot that they referred to them as gym leaders, but that was kind of just to instill in them, like, okay, this is the adult in the room. You need to listen what they say, and they're the only ones who are allowed to officiate things.
I'm thinking of an age bracket here. There's probably an age where it cuts off for like where the little kids are playing, and then maybe you'd have like the older teens who would be mentors or coaches to help facilitate things, because one gym leader can't help everyone.
Yeah. I would say it was probably mostly elementary school kids, though. Like, at least 50% were elementary school kids. And there would be maybe 3 or 4 older kids, and then a couple of adults. One of the other things I remember is that even then, like in 2001, 2002, whenever it was, is that even then you still had like some greasy man-children who would show up there with the fucking neckbeard and tons of binders of cards and playing a serious game against children.
People who actually studied the meta and built competitive decks as opposed to...
Yeah.
I have 3 Pikachus because Pikachu's my favorite.
I remember I was trying to convince my parents to give it a try at one point, just because I was like, see? Look, there's adults here too. Adults could enjoy this. Too young to understand that those are not adults to aspire to.
Though nowadays, maybe they would be, because so many of us have had that juvenilism as adults that we do shit like play with Pokemon cards. I don't, because I never learned how the game worked.
Yeah. I guess I'm still amazed in retrospect how many people were able to figure out the game.
I know with the boxes, like they came with an actual rule list that you could
Yeah.
pick out and follow. We never, me and my older brothers never did. I was
Yeah.
9, 10 at the time, and he was 13, 14. We didn't care. We just had Arcanine fight each other.
Yeah. No, kids are just too impatient like that. I guess thinking back on it though, it wasn't until one I had picked up the Game Boy version of the Pokemon trading card game that had come out,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the I got a couple VHS tapes that I linked you one of them, but using that, it helped me get like a better grasp on how you actually play the game.
And I think the VHS you showed me, you said you got in 2003, so that was like 2 years after you had started at these things, huh?
Exactly. I had started going to them and just kind of been entranced, just like, oh, this is really cool. This is a spectacle. But, just getting my ass beat so bad because I didn't know what I was doing by these other kids. And I guess because of that, I would get scared off by it a little bit. I would come there and just basically go there just to play one battle and then just trade with people, hang out, get some food from the food court.
Did the gym leaders also like make sure that the kids weren't robbing each other in trades or stealing shit?
Yeah. No, generally they had to be there to certify the trades. At the very least, there would be some of the older kids there too. Just one of them is like a gym leader assistant.
I imagine they were incentivized in some way. They got free cards or whatever. I don't know how you made them.
So one of the other things that incentivized with them is the booklets, and I googled around them to see what they were officially called. Badge books. That's what they were called. I think I linked to you one of them.
Yeah, you did.
But yeah, and you can find them on eBay too. I'll go ahead and put a link to one of them I see. They have a lot of good pictures on this one. But essentially, it helped incentivize people to want to be assistants to the gym leaders, just because you would get more points and work your way up to badges or free cards or challenge stickers or any of these other little small incentive rewards.
And I'm seeing here, like, every gym, so to speak, has its own little, here's the thing to sort of increase the difficulty that you can do.
Yeah.
To make it more fun. So they were really putting a lot of thought into how can we. It's not a competitive card game in the way that we normally would think of, like it is now, where you have a world championships in Honolulu that people are going to be playing the TCG for. But
yeah,
they were trying to make it a game in which kids would compete against each other regularly.
Yeah, and give kids ways to challenge themselves if they do, want to increase their skills and become a master, so to speak. Looking back on it though, I cannot remember many kids at all ever doing the challenges. I think every kid I had met had maybe like one or two of those stickers checked off. The only ones who I would see do it would be just those couple older kids, just because they were at a comfortable enough level playing the card game that they felt like they could push themselves with that. At the time when you're a kid, these gym leader challenges felt very daunting.
I mean, I'm looking at prices here on the one that you showed me. Your basic Pokemon cards cannot attack, only your evolved Pokemon can. So you basically had to come into it with the idea of, I'm going to have a couple of different families and I'm going to be evolving them constantly, which that's card economy. They wouldn't have understood that as a concept, but it's very important and something that they would have naturally run afoul of. Was there a prize for this, or was it like bragging rights?
It was essentially bragging rights, because this would be a league that would take place over the course of like a year, essentially, or in this case, probably like most of a summer, and like the tail ends of a school year. Because I specifically remember this Gen 2 version of the booklet, just because that's where I had started from the beginning. When I first started showing up to these tournaments, they were still on the Gen 1 booklet, but it was so late into the competitive league season by that point that it was hard to earn the points in the same way. You definitely had the best advantage if you were on the same footing as everyone else, like starting from square one. I guess I can't really remember how long because you would go through each city at a time. It would be like, okay, this is the month of May, we're on Goldenrod with Whitney right now, and you have like a certain time window to accrue this many points and work your way up to a badge or promo cards or stickers or whatever, And if you do not get within that time window, then that's it. We're moving on to Morty. We're moving on to Ecruteak City.
Were these all at the same place every month, basically? And
Yes.
how many times a month did they meet? Like, was it a weekend thing? You got 4 weekends to...
Yeah, it was a weekend thing, and it was always the same place. I want to say there was maybe 2 other places in Atlanta that regularly ran this. I went to a mall food court, which was the closest option for me. And essentially, my dad would drop me off there around like 12 or 1 p.m. and then pick me up at like 4 or 5 p.m. And we just, me and my brothers or my friends from school or my friends from the neighborhood would all just go there, hang out, and play the card game and shit.
At least for this era of the Pokemon TCG, how long would a normal game go, even with kids fucking around and not knowing the rules, really?
That's the issue, is just the kids fucking around. I'd say somewhere between like 15-30 minutes per game.
I'd imagine not everyone's playing all the time, but...
No, yeah.
You know, 15, if you're doing 15 minutes, 4 games an hour, times 5. I suppose you could grind up these over the course of a couple weekends, even if you suck.
Yeah, exactly. Give kids plenty of chances.
And then, like you said, the Whitney month in May, that would have been... You would do Whitney's challenge, so everyone would be doing that. It wouldn't be like one person doing one challenge, one person doing another.
Correct. Yeah, you'd all be kind of on the same challenge. One of the other things I remember about doing this league is that, and I noticed this on some of the last screenshots from this booklet, is the promo card section. I wish I could remember this, but essentially you would be able to slowly work your way up to rare cards that the gym leaders, the officials for the league, would have a stash of. And essentially, once you'd gotten enough stamps, you could trade it in for one of those. And those were the only way to get those cards. They were not available through booster packs. If I remember right, I remember hearing that these were done through like vending machines in Japan. And because you don't have any sort of equivalent to card vending machines over here in the States, that was the job of the gym leaders to hand out. So these were kind of the only way to obtain like a handful of specific really cool cards.
I know that nowadays speculation of Pokemon cards is bad, or at least it was back in 2020. I can't imagine it wouldn't have been any less egregious in 1999, 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
So you couldn't put that shit in a vending machine in the United States. It'd get robbed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But, the Japanese love vending machines. They love their gachapon stuff, so you can get away with it there.
One of the other things I remember is that the only place in this mall which sold cards, there was like a stamp and coin shop.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on the complete other opposite side of the mall. And so regularly throughout the weekend, you would have kids doing this mad dash from the food court side of the mall all the way up to the fucking stamp and coin shop just to go buy some booster packs.
Did they ever run out? Because that was a problem with our stores where I lived.
I don't remember that happening, but it's absolutely possible.
I'm guessing you weren't one of the ones mad dashing and buying them every week, because they weren't expensive, but they were like $2 a pack, and for a kid, $5 allowance. That's not a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, it was more of just a challenge of when I had money. But no, I would just be, I would more be following my other friends who would have money to go buy them.
You might be the one to get like one of the commons that they didn't want or had duplicates of.
Exactly.
That was me and my brother.
One cool thing I do remember though was because of how big the game was at the time. The card shops would be willing to just let you go with a handful of free cards just to help you get started. Like if you go there and just say like, hey, I'm new, I'm trying to build my first deck or whatever, they'd give you like a handful of energy cards, maybe some basic Pokemon, that type of thing, just to help you round out a starter deck, which is pretty cool.
How did they do proxies at the time?
What do you mean?
So, if you wanted to build a deck around a card, let's say Igglybuff, just because it's on my screen now,
yeah,
but you didn't have Igglybuff, could you substitute like an index card for Igglybuff or something? Proxies are kind of a thing in modern trading card competitions, because not everyone has access to all the same cards, and like Yu-Gi-Oh cards get expensive as fuck.
No, you just would have been shit out of luck. If you don't have it, you don't have it.
Gotta buy more, kid.
Yep, absolutely. That's why it was. It's become a meme now. But the whole thing with the Pokemon Charizard card, the OG Charizard card,
Mm-hmm.
that thing was stupid OP for the time, and it wasn't banned or anything in any of these competitions. If you had it, then fuck yeah, you have like almost like a win-free card because it was so stupid strong.
Yeah, that was like the big card. That was like, when you get this is the final boss card, and you don't need to collect anymore. Which doesn't make sense because I, again, didn't play the game. It was just about having them. But I know that the guys at the flea market were selling them in the plastic thing for $60 at one point, and I was like, oh, that's cheap.
Yeah.
Compared to what I was hearing it was going for elsewhere.
I bet.
And then Logan Paul bought one for however much.
Stupid amount. I'm not sure what the amount was.
It wasn't what it was worth.
No.
All it did was create more financial speculation during a weird year when that was kind of a bad thing. So, something I found when I've been digging online about Pokemon during Web 1.0 and then the transition to Web 2.0 in like 2002, 2003 is that even in as far back as like 1999, like the year after the card game came out, there was already a huge speculative market on forums online.
Kinda,
people trying to buy and sell them.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether it was adults that kind of started this or if it was the kids, but there was kind of this prevailing notion among everyone, just like these are going to be a fuck ton of money someday. Like everyone felt like they were sitting on like U.S. Treasury bonds, basically.
Through some of these online shops, you could actually go out and like make a very primitive Amazon type purchase or a PayPal exchange type purchase to buy them from people. Single cards for tens, maybe $100 for the Charizard one.
Yeah, and you had people doing that a little bit at the time at the competitions, but I don't know a whole lot of people who would go for it.
Well, I'd imagine kids couldn't. They couldn't buy into that kind of market because they don't have money.
but they would be easily tempted. Just be like, hey, that card that you got, I'll give you $40 for that right now. And the kid's just thinking, oh my god, that's so many fucking booster packs.
Oh yeah, like, I didn't even think about it, but yeah, the kids might have been the ones who have the card that a speculator might want and try to pry it off of them. Would a gym leader have allowed someone to buy a card from someone else?
Thinking back on it, I'm going to say technically no, but probably that happened. Just because the gym leaders were not always the most attentive people, as I remember. I'm not sure what they got paid exactly, but they were kind of just showing up there like at the behest of Wizards of the Coast, who was running the tournament circuit. They weren't people who were like super into the game themselves.
Sure.
More often it would be like imagine like a scout leader for like Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts. Like maybe they're doing it because they one of their like nephews or something is into it, or maybe they have a kid who's into it. But they themselves are not really directly tied to it at all. So they're just kind of like sitting there, kind of reading a book or whatever for half the time.
Maybe there's a gym leader rule book that exists of where Wizards says no, you can't let them sell cards, or
Exactly.
maybe Wizards just didn't care.
Yeah.
But I know one of the things that came out of sort of the anti-Pokemon hysteria was that these trading cards were something expensive or thought to be expensive, and kids were stealing them at school or being taken advantage of in exploitative trades. So,
speaking of stealing them, I have a fun little hot confession to drop on you.
Did you steal them?
Yes.
Oh boy, tell me.
So if I had a guess, I'd say maybe half of my collection of Pokemon cards were essentially shoplifted growing up.
Did you shoplift booster packs or?
Yes, I would shoplift booster packs on the regular. I would go to Target and I would essentially sneakily grab one or two of them, go to the bathroom, rip it open, and pocket the cards. And I got away with doing this for a long, long time.
I'm trying to think. I think you're only like a year or two younger than me, so I can kind of guess at what age you are. And yeah, you should have had a moral compass at that time.
Oh, for sure.
But also, hey, free cards. These are cool.
Yeah. No, if I had a guess, I'm gonna guess this would have been like 4th, 5th, 6th grade, somewhere around there where I was doing that.
Let's see, I would have been 4th or 5th grade when Pokemon was huge as well. I never stole any, but that's mostly because I didn't. I don't know, I was a good kid, and I also didn't get a chance.
Yeah. No, I was definitely not a good kid at that particular point. And I had a loose moral compass when it came to specific things such as shoplifting.
Did you ever steal from a friend or another person who owned it, or?
I did, but not directly.
So what does that mean?
Oh boy, this is turning into a little confessional. Um, so what that means is that I had a couple friends who essentially would leave cards of all types just kind of scattered on the floor at their place.
Right.
And so there would be basically 2 decks worth of cards, like 120 cards, just scattered all over the floor. And they were essentially sitting there just because they were too lazy to ever pick them up. They were not ever using them for anything, using them for any active decks or anything. And during the times that I would go over to their house, they would maybe they would rarely ever go like, "Oh yeah, I think I have something like that." And when I would kind of ask them off the cuff, just like, "Hey, can I have this one particular card?" They'd be cool with it. So me being a little asshole, after a certain while, was just like, well, they're probably gonna say yes anyway, so why don't I just take this?
You got the permission the one time, that counts forever, right?
That's right. Yeah. I was a little asshole, and I think, and my parents were also very stingy with giving me money for video game related hobbies, and this was, I guess, kind of my way of solving that problem as a kid. Was I'll just fucking steal it.
I'm pretty sure there were tons of kids who did exactly the same thing. I mean, some of them might just be pussies and not admit it, but I'm pretty sure that there were ones who did. I've stolen a few toys from my friends when I was younger. I never stole a Pokemon card, I don't think. But I do remember, I guess this would have been Christmas of 2000, probably Christmas of 1999, so like the year after, the year in the middle of it all. My dad had got us Pokemon cards as stocking stuffers, like booster packs, and we knew about this because we were little shits, and we found out where he hid the Christmas presents, and he sucked at hiding them, so we knew. Come Christmas time, though, there weren't any booster packs in my stocking. And I was like, well, what the fuck? Where did they go to? I never got a concrete answer, but I'm pretty sure my older brother and his friend probably pocketed them and told me not to tell my dad about the fact that I knew about them because, one, they could get away with it easier, and also, like, he's gonna take them back to the store if he knows that we found them.
Yeah. Oh man. Wait, so what'd you do on Christmas then? Did you say anything? Just like, oh, I don't have any.
Well, I couldn't admit that I knew that they were coming, and my dad didn't seem to notice or care that I didn't have any.
Damn.
I can't even remember what I got for that Christmas anyway. It was like, I was 9, so who the fuck knows. I'm pretty sure by that point already, though, my Game Boy with Pokemon Blue had already been stolen, which I had gotten a month earlier. My birthday's in November. For my birthday, and it got stolen pretty quickly. Someone, probably the friend of my brother's who lived across the street, broke into our house and ran off with it. Didn't steal anything else.
Fuck, dude.
In hindsight now, as a 30-something-year-old, looking back, it's like, yeah, someone deliberately went in to get that specific thing, and I never found out who. Yeah, maybe that's why I didn't get into the card game. I just didn't trust people not to steal shit from me.
Fair enough, honestly.
You can't steal the anime.
Yeah. Honestly, I remember even more theft being done to me as well. Maybe that's why I was just such a little retribution bastard.
Was it your friends who were stealing from you, or?
It was my brothers. So I have 2 younger brothers, and we had a problem early on where we would just thieve each other's cards. Usually them thieving mine. And because of that, we got into this whole system of... my parents would have a special gel pen, and they would write our initial on the back.
Oh dear.
Okay, this is Chris's cards, this is the brothers' cards. And so a lot of cards, especially in Yu-Gi-Oh! When we got there, was a lot of those cards would just be permanently marked with a C or a D or a K on the back.
That's amazing because it completely destroys like any sort of speculative value it has.
Yeah.
So they actually just become toys like they're meant to be.
Exactly. But their parents, they're just trying to solve a problem. They don't think about that.
And why would they? Like, they don't care that this thing is like the stock market. something that they're to keep their kids happy with.
Exactly.
When they start bitching at each other about it, then yeah, you have to step in.
Yeah. It's also why I'm like, thank God Yu-Gi-Oh cards didn't jump up in value as much as Pokemon cards did, or I'd be fucked.
And at least Magic the Gathering is so arcane, and it's not tied to any, like... I think Duel Masters was Magic the Gathering, but no one knew that.
Yeah. I remember one of my brother's friends stole a handful of cards from me, Pokemon cards specifically, and they had gone through the washing machine, and so they were extremely like beat up, disheveled, but they were super rare cards, so you couldn't just get rid of them. Like one was a Gengar, I remember.
Holographic?
And yes, so fairly rare and also pretty strong.
Yeah.
And so I remember specifically at one point this friend had spent the night over at my place and hung out with my brothers, and I come across this card that's been missing forever, and we end up confronting him on it, and he makes up some sob story on the spot about how that's his card and his brother gave it to him, and he accidentally let it go through the wash, and his brother helped him kind of laminate it back up and fix it up the exact same way this did. And you're crazy. What are you talking about?
And of course, you can't disprove them, so you have to...
No, we can't. Yeah. We just gotta take it in face value. But I remember at one point, this kid did end up stealing from one other kid, his cards. And it was only after there had been like a repeat theft that we could actually confront this kid on it and get the stuff back.
Did you ever bring him to the school?
The Pokemon cards? Yes.
Of course. Like, did you?
Yes.
Were you told not to?
Yes.
Did you face any consequences for doing it?
By my parents, yes. By the school system, no.
What? So, did the school system like snitch on you? Just like,
yes.
Christopher has Pokemon cards and they're demonic, and/or he's probably stealing shit.
Not that they're demonic, but just that you're goofing off during school, and. Right. Yeah, I think for that reason, they would snitch on my parents. Then it was up to my parents to enact judgment. And I remember I essentially got everything Pokemon related confiscated for a couple months.
When was this? Like, what age and/or year, if you can associate one with it?
I would guess 2003.
Right. So near the end, when you were buying the VHSs?
Yes.
They just were like, okay, Chris is banned from Pokemon cards for 3 months because he needs to get his grades up?
Yeah.
Did you get your grades up?
Yeah, eventually. And at that point, they had taken the cards as well as the Game Boy games as well.
So which Game Boy games did you have up to that point?
I had Red and Silver.
Okay. The Ruby and Sapphire wouldn't have come out in America yet. I think it would have been shortly thereafter, though.
We were pretty on top of picking up every Pokemon game as it came out, though.
You already had the Game Boy Advance?
Correct.
Oddly enough, my first Game Boy Advance was also stolen. I had the SP.
Yeah? Nice.
I lent it and my copy of Pokemon Sapphire to a friend, and that was in high school. I was in high school at that point. Mm-hmm. And he just didn't return it. It's like... And in hindsight, like, at the time, I was like, oh, this is stupid. You owe me $100, and expected him to give it back. But also, it's like, you're in high school, dude. Why the fuck are you doing this playground shit now?
I guess when me and my brothers got Game Boy Advance, it was at the release of Ruby and Sapphire. So I'm trying to think of what else would have come out by that point that we would have picked up a Game Boy Advance for, but I think that was it.
When I think back about the Game Boy Advance library, it's... The stuff that I associate with it is like Phoenix Wright, which children wouldn't have been playing, Harvest Moon, which probably kids your age wouldn't have been playing, but I was, because I was a bit older.
Yeah.
Mario. There wasn't a Mario for the Game Boy Advance.
Not initially. There was eventually, but yeah, I don't think at launch there was.
I think Pokemon was the big seller for it, yeah.
Yeah.
And those came out, I think, in March 2003. So... When did you lapse from Pokemon?
I guess, do you mean the card game or the...
Was it in stages, or...?
It was definitely in stages. Like, the show / anime was the first thing that I dropped. around the second season of the anime, like during Gen 2, that was about the point where I just stopped keeping up with the show and mainly just checked in when the movies came out.
Is there an episode that you remember watching and thinking like, this isn't magical for me anymore?
No, I don't think so. It was just kind of a point where I would see like some little commercial advertisement for the new episode, and just thinking, yeah, I don't really care anymore.
So what about the TCG then? Because you were going hard on that while you were not watching the show.
I was going hard with the TCG. Let me think, because I was definitely playing through all the Gen 2 sets. I want to say probably 2004, 2005 was when I stopped keeping up with it. Specifically, it was after Gen 3 came out. The new sets that they were pushing, that was when they had dropped Wizards of the Coast, and it was Nintendo doing it themselves, and they had done kind of a aesthetic refresh of the cards. They all had a much different look to it, and they also launched with this gimmick of the e-card reader, where it was like an attachment that plugged into the Game Boy Advance, and it had like a barcode on the card, and you could swipe that for something in game.
Yeah, I saw that. Like when you first brought up the TCG as like a thing you were into, I began researching it, and I had no idea that it existed. I knew the e-reader was a thing. I didn't know that you could get Pokemon cards and like swipe them, and it would create a music player or something.
Yeah, I genuinely don't remember what the rewards for swiping the cards were, but I just remember that whole gimmick, along with the change in aesthetics, was enough to make me just, I guess, less interested in the card game. And then also by that point, Yu-Gi-Oh had started coming out in full force, and I know at least in my circle of friends, everyone was kind of switching to Yu-Gi-Oh by that point.
It is a slightly higher demographic than Pokemon is, and as a game, as a show, and all that. So,
yeah,
I think a lot of people had made that transition at some point.
Yeah, it's just like as a kid, at some point you get a bit older, and then Pokemon starts looking a bit childish compared to Yu-Gi-Oh, which was a bit more, edgy and serious, I guess.
People got sent to the Shadow Realm. All the monsters, Pegasus had the Toon monsters, and those were cute looking, but the Blue Eyes White Dragon is, a Final Fantasy looking monster.
Exactly. Yeah, I did a little bit of competing with Yu-Gi-Oh when that came out. I don't remember any sort of elaborate circuit or league set up for it in the same way. There was definitely still kind of the same spot where kids would come on a weekly basis to come play the game, but there wasn't any sort of like incentive or rewards for kids to keep showing up. There were tournaments now and then, though. So it's like in place of having a regular league, you did have occasional tournaments for people.
I don't know the business behind it, but Wizards of the Coast never had Yu-Gi-Oh! That was all Konami, wasn't it? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I believe so. Konami, and I think the other company was Upper Deck. I want to say they were like a baseball card type company. But yeah, anyways, we would have Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments to a similar effect. And I think by that point, at least where I was going for the regular leagues, there was kind of a division where you had, I guess, 50% of the audience there playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And then 25% playing Pokemon, who were just, still had their heart set on it. And then you had another 25% of Magic. Magic was definitely starting to come back into the public eye, in the sense of like people were not playing in shadowy basements anymore. They were willing to play out in the open with the other card game losers.
Right? That's cool. Were there different demographics, like the Magics were the older teens, and the Yu-Gi-Oh! Were the younger teens, and the children played Pokemon?
Exactly. Yeah. Let me think. I'm trying to remember, I guess, any memories I have of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments while we're here, but I don't remember much. I remember getting schooled all the time with Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically.
It is an actual competitive card game, yeah.
Yeah. Funny enough, one other tournament I do remember is the Harry Potter trading card game. It was actually really fucking cool when it came out, but essentially, let me find some pictures of this thing.
Yeah, I haven't heard of this from anyone ever.
It only lasted like a year, but during the year that it existed, it was pushed pretty hard within the local card game scene. And essentially, after the first few months that it had been out, they held a lot of big promotional tournaments at the mall where we did this. And I remember actually placing in the like top 6 of this tournament they did. Ended up winning like 14 or 15 booster packs of it as a prize. There was a cash prize for the winner, but traditionally with these tournaments, all the monetary prize, if there is any, is only for the winner.
Mhm.
All the runners up, anyone in like the top 6 or top 8 just gets like a handful of booster packs. But yeah, this was a very short-lived card game, but it was pretty fun to compete with that. And also just because I guess by that point Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh both had been out for a while, and so I think the best, not the best decks, but like the best strategies had kind of been figured out. The game had kind of been solved in a sense. Whereas with something weird like the Harry Potter trading card game, it's like that's brand new. No one's really figured it out yet, so it's kind of, floodgates are open, just no holds barred, just luck of the draw to some degree. But yeah.
I wonder if the demographic just wasn't there. Like, people who liked Harry Potter were kind of nerds, even when it became mainstream, but they weren't the anime nerds who would. I don't know. That's a sociological question. I have no idea.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, looking back on it, I don't remember many older kids being into this card game.
It definitely looks very young.
Yeah. Like, I feel like with all the other games, there was my demographic at the time, whatever it was, my generation, but there would always be like a handful of people who were older and younger than me. But with this, for the short time that it was alive, it was definitely only my demographic. There really wasn't anyone else being pulled into this or interested in it. I was just going to say, just after this, within the local card game scene, Harry Potter died out quickly, and then it was definitely back to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. I'd say Pokemon as a popular card game really did not last much beyond the Gen 3 era, at least from what I had seen. It honestly wasn't until, I guess, more recent years where there'd kind of been a renewed interest in the cards from, fucking streamers like buying the super expensive cards.
Did you ever lapse from the Pokemon games?
Yeah, I had a very hard point after Gen 3 when the games began to switch to full 3D, where I just they just didn't scratch the itch for me anymore. I realized when Diamond and Pearl came out, and then especially Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the switch from the 2D pixel art to the small 3D models was kind of a deal breaker for me, I guess. I just didn't find it as aesthetically pleasing.
So they were still 2D sprites until Gen 6, but I understand what you mean. That there was an added depth to it. It wasn't.
Yeah, it was pseudo 3D. But
right.
Yeah. I think also with Gen 4, I at least felt like aesthetically it was kind of changing to something that I just wasn't that interested in. Just as far as like the design of the creatures, I just didn't care that much. They just seemed a lot more cartoony and less creature-like, monstrous. Not sure the best way to put that into words, but yeah, you get what I mean. I will say from what I've heard about Black and White especially, just I do feel like the games did go on to do pretty neat things as far as story goes and shaking up the formula, but yeah, it just felt like aesthetically Pokemon was just not what I was interested in anymore at that point. I just remember looking it up at one point, just like, why did they do this? Like, I specifically remember when Heart Gold Soul Silver came out, and I was comparing like how the protagonist looked in the remakes versus the original, and just being like, man, where'd all the cool factor go? Like, he looks so slimmed down and twinkish. Who is this fuckboy? Yeah, I think just overall artistic changes was what kind of pushed me away from Pokemon at that point. It wasn't anything necessarily with the games themselves or the formula. Like, I still have old copies of Fire Red and Silver and Ruby Sapphire that I still play again from time to time. I guess one last point that I'll end on is I do think the early years of the Pokemon trading card game still hold up in terms of how fun it was to play the game at the time, in terms of how fun it was to use certain cards and collect certain cards. One of the ways that I still maintain my enjoyment with the game has been the old Game Boy version of the trading card game. I badly wish that they had created any sort of follow-up to that. And I guess it's kind of tied up into a rights thing. But to me, that'll always be kind of the what if, as if we could have gotten digital versions of like the Gen 2 cards of the card game.
There was a second card game. It never came to the States. I mean, there's probably
There is fan ROMs, and I actually at a convention earlier this year, I bought a fan-made translated ROM.
That's cool. That's
Like
cool as hell.
Yeah, they took the translated ROM and loaded it onto a Game Boy cartridge, so I can play it on my actual SP now.
I do wonder why they never like made an update to them, especially in Gen 3 when they were doing Pokemon Pinball and stuff.
I'm amazed that they didn't try and push that a little bit more.
I guess it's a Wizards of the Coast thing.
Yeah, so sad. It's fun to relive this too, because this is honestly like a thing that I did so long ago that it's never come up in conversation like once since that happened.
Right.
Like this is a time in my life that I don't think I've ever gotten to talk about before. It's really fun.
And so after where that leaves off, we said goodbye. He went off to play games, I went off to do whatever nerd shit I was doing, and the conversation more or less ended there. If you're interested in this type of thing and you want to get more of it elsewhere, I highly recommend the Johto Times on Substack. It's a weekly newsletter, often delving into the history of old Pokemon fan websites, with interviews from their old creators. It's a really interesting read, and I look forward to it every Thursday, and you should check it out if this is the type of thing that you like, because it's more or less the same. Well, until next time we meet, this has been Dr. Truth or Deal, talking about Pokemon with my friend Chris. Bye, Inara.